We are really lucky to have a great keynote speaker here today. Tim Draper has an incredible career in venture financing. I'd like to invite you up to come on up.
Well, this is great. You know, we're an hour plus late, and it reminds me that the SEC was supposed to have this whole thing. So I'll try, instead of going through all my slides, I think I'll just wing it and speed this whole thing up, because I want the SEC to speed their thing up, and if we could, you know, put a lot of pressure on them, that would be just terrific. What I thought I'd talk to you about is, what's really interesting is that Howard came at it from one angle, and I came at it from another angle. I started an SBIC, and through the SBIC, I was a qualified investor at 26 years old. And so I started to put this money to work, and a lot of my companies needed more money and had the same problem that Howard had. But I also had a bunch of friends, and they weren't able to invest. And I said, oh, this is so much fun. I'm having a great time. We're investing in all these companies, and they weren't able to invest. And I kept that in the back of my mind, and then in 1998, 99, things were booming, and I thought, you know, this really, I don't want to invest in any of those. I don't want to invest in these things that have already been vetted by every other, you know, professional investor in the world. I wanted to invest in, you know, people like you guys. And so I thought, well, you know, and everybody should be able to do this. And so we, back in 1998, we were the original crowdfunders, I guess. We started something called Maybe. Oh, by the way, why am I the person speaking here? I have only failed at crowdfunding. I'm a complete failure at crowdfunding, but I've tried a lot of times. So I tried with MeBC. It was Draper, Fisher, Gertz, and MeBC Ventures, and we had the whole thing set up, and we were able to go out and raise the money. We paid lawyers a fortune, and we were able to go out and raise the money. We raised $400 million, and we said, this is great. We can invest the people's money. You know, they don't have to be left out of this great venture capital asset class. And we said, and we're in such a good position to do it because we have all of these companies in our portfolio that are fantastic, and we can pick and choose. We can make these people some good money. And then the government came down and said, oh yeah, we had already raised money. Okay. Oh, you guys can't manage this money because you also manage private money, and we are concerned that you will be investing in the bad deals with the one fund and the good deals with your private money. And I thought, oh God, okay, well, we'll just hire a team of really good people to do this, and they'll make the decisions, and they can invest in our entire portfolio and anything else they see. And so we hired a really top-flight team, and then the government came down and said, oh, we can't invest in any of your companies. And I thought, well, where's the advantage here? There's just a bunch of guys and they're trying to become a venture capitalist. And so then I said, okay, well then, and so we backed away, and we said, well, you know, if we're not doing anything, we're not going to take any money. So we completely backed away, and we gave the fund to this venture group that we had hired. And so the venture group started to do their job, and the stock price went from 20 down to 10, and a hedge fund group came in, and it went from 20 down to 10, and it had $17 worth of cash in it. And a hedge fund group came in and swooped in and grabbed MeBC off the market. And that was the end of venture capital in the for the public investor. And I looked at that and I said, oh boy, this is wrong. So my other experience was after Sarbanes-Oxley, we ended up with so many regulations that it almost didn't make sense for companies to go public unless they were worth about $1 billion. So these entrepreneurs, where I was making this promise, look, you work really hard for 5 to 7 years, and you get to be 20 million in revenues and 3 million in profits, and we can take you public. And we said that from 1985 to 2000 or 2003, and then all of a sudden I realized that that was a complete lie, because now that Sarbanes-Oxley came through and all these other regulations, it was going to cost, what was it, $4.8 million for these companies to go public. And so that, in effect, would wipe out all the profits of these companies that were 20 million in sales and 3 million in profits. And I looked and I said, oh yeah, well those were the rules before, but now, you know, you're 20 million in sales and 3 million in profits. Put your head back down for another 5 to 7 years, get to be worth $1 billion, and then you can go public. And so these entrepreneurs, kind of started to look for other options, and a lot of them had to sell out. They couldn't raise more money because the venture market, no money, and so a lot of them, you know, got to be worth like, you know, $500 million, but still too small to go public. They file their S1 and then spend all that money on lawyers and accountants, and then not be able to quite take it public, and then they die on the vine. And a bunch of our companies were going up, and we're going, yay! And then they're going down, and then we're going, ooh. So, I started to look at this, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is awful. How can we change the nature of this thing? How do we change it? And the way I usually change things is through starting something. And so I ran into Thomas Foley, who's in the back there. You can wave your hand, Thomas. And he had an interesting idea for how to do an investment bank in a new way, so that we could, in effect, take companies out, but still keep them private and allow them to be tradable. And we spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of money, and he's worked very hard. And I figured he wanted a young person because this is going to take a long time. And I'm going to be dead by the time the SEC finally, you know, by the time Howard finally is there celebrating. You know. But we set it up, and it was all set, Expert Financial, and we decided that this was the way to go. And these small companies, when they got to be 15 or 20 million in revenue, 3 to 10 million in profits, they could then go out and have this tradable system. We created a beauty, he and his team created a beautiful system. Everything was great. And so then I started talking to entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs were saying, this is the greatest thing ever. I am definitely going to do this. And then they'd go to their boards. The boards would say, in my ultimate wisdom, we've always done it this way, and we always want to wait until the time is right. And the boards would say, or you can always sell out, or you can. And so we couldn't get anybody over the hump. That was years of pounding, and I manipulated every one of my CEOs. I did everything I possibly could, and nothing came of it. So then, when you guys came up with this crowdfunding bill, I thought, wow, fantastic! We're finally going to get this thing to happen, and it's really well written, and it had a lot of good input, and people have really figured this out, and now we can all invest in these companies, and we all get going. And then, miracle of miracles, it's passed, and it's a law. And then what happened? All of a sudden I realized that the SEC, 20 people, there are 20 people. Okay, how many people in the country? It's like 300 million, right? We've passed the law. Why are we waiting for 20 people to write down what they think the regulation should be? We should just go. says, we have a law. It's done. We got, who made the SEC the great and powerful wizard of whatever? This is wrong. This is America. It's our country. It's our government. We voted in a law. Let's make it happen. So let's just put the pressure on them and say, hey, we're going to do this anyway. You guys come along or not. We're just going to do it anyway. So here's an interesting thing. Here's another little way to get at that pressure. Right? Put that pressure on. Change is happening faster and faster, right? Throughout the world. And Moore's law says that $1,000 of compute power doubles every 18 months. Now it's down to every 12 months. So every year you have a more powerful system from which you can innovate, create, do extraordinary things. It also means that, that we've got to stay on our toes because change is happening faster and faster. It's actually also interesting that you hear all of this stuff about energy policy and electricity and whatever. The cost of electricity continues down. It's in an exponential way. Over the last 50 years, cost of electricity has gone down about 10x. We have great things happening. It all happened because of people like you, the private sector. We have amazing things happening out there. And so if you think about that kind of change, go back 150 years and think of all the change that's happened over that 150 years and how our lives have improved because of that. That's indoor plumbing, electricity, the computer, all the way up to the smartphone, the pill, the bomb, the whole, all sorts of things that happen. In the next 15 years, we will experience as humans the same amount of change as what happened in the last 150 years because of all of these accelerating changes in science and because more and more of us are a part of this, economic system. We're all a part, there are more of us, more creativity is happening. So with all that change happening, there's one other thing I'm going to add, and that is we funded Hotmail, and I came up with that little message at the bottom of the screen that says, well, it's supposed to say, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail. But the founders took out the P.S. I love you, and they did, but they did, to their credit, do it. Now, to this day, we would probably have a more peaceful and loving world. But in any case, Hotmail spread to 11 million users in 18 months, and within our founder sent one email to his friend in India. Within 3 weeks, we had 100,000 registered Hotmail users in India. And all of a sudden, it all opened up to me. I understood it all. Geographic borders were going to fall. And we were all going to be able to do business anywhere we wanted to do business. And there was going to be commoditization of distribution, which is happening now, and a real premium on creativity, and what used to be a very small group of engineers and scientists, primarily in the US, that were really doing all the innovating. Now we have 7 billion people all being able to create and innovate. And you've seen the effect on governments. I went to Ukraine and met with the president of Ukraine, President Yushchenko, and he had led the Orange Revolution with instant messaging. The women, the pretty women at the front of the lines went up there and put little flowers in all the guns. And they kept the pressure on the Capitol, and it finally folded because 24/7 they could use instant messaging to say, hey, I'm getting tired, I need a replacement, or hey, get me some pizza, or some Ukrainian pizza, bring a beer, whatever it is. And through instant messaging, they kept that pressure on the Capitol all the time, 24/7. That same thing happened in Egypt and Tunisia, and they overthrew bad governments there. So then the other thing is that we're all communicating, and we're all sort of saying, well, where are the good governments? And so the governments have to now compete for all of you guys, for the great minds and the capital and the businesses of the world. And they're starting to recognize that. And this president of Ukraine said to me, "You must invest in Ukraine." And I said, "Well, I'll never invest in Ukraine. But you know, it takes 23 bureaucrats in 6 months before you can even incorporate here." And he said, "That will be one bureaucrat, 1 week." And now he never was able to accomplish that. But the idea of a dictator becoming a salesperson changes people's thinking. And interestingly enough, same thing happened to me in China with one of the big deputy prime ministers of finance. I said to him, "No, I don't want to invest in China." This was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I went over there just because I was sort of curious. And he met with me, and I said, "I'll never invest in this country." And he said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Because I met a guy who started a chocolate company. He built it up to $90 million in value, or in sales here in China, and you guys nationalized it." And he said, "Well, what would you recommend we do?" And I said, "Well, if anybody is willing to invest in China, you should make sure that they make as much money as they possibly can so they can come back and tell all their friends they made a whole bunch of money in China, and all their friends will come. You get more capital than you ever imagined." China recognized this, and somehow China became one of the great economic powers of the world. Interestingly, same thing has happened to me in Vietnam, in Korea, in many of the Eastern European countries, in Africa, all over the world. The dictators or politicians or whoever are saying, "Hey, we've got to compete for this because then we'll have a rich world." And then, you know, I've spent some time in Russia too, and where they have, I didn't quite understand Russia for quite a long time, and now I kind of do. They had the Bolsheviks come through, and the Bolsheviks said, "We're going to eliminate all these rich people." It's funny, you're hearing that here. But we're going to eliminate all these rich people, and we're going to make business illegal. Okay, that was 75 years ago. So for 75 years, business has been illegal in Russia. Can you imagine that? You're an entrepreneur, you're a Russian entrepreneur, 20 years old. Your parents, their parents, and their parents all believed that business was bad. They all had this belief that business was bad. And you know, how do you overcome that kind of thing? But the Russians are doing their best. Medvedev more than Putin, but the Russians are doing their best to try to attract business there and to try to sort of build up an economy in this very competitive but also geographically unlimited. You know, Tennessee has said, "Oh, we've just decided that we're getting rid of all our income tax. Come to Tennessee." So there's this competitive governance that's happening inside our U.S. But the country itself doesn't have competition, or doesn't perceive competition. And they don't perceive this rate of change happening. And they're wasting a lot of time getting this crowdfunding bill put together, crowdfunding law put together, so that we can all, you know what the rules are. I think we've got a real problem, and you guys are the beginning of something really great if we can just put them over the edge. And it's not just go, and don't look at it incrementally like, oh, well, we can invest $500,000 if we're this kind of people, and we do this kind of thing, and we do that. Because every time there's an if, that's another form for an entrepreneur to fill out. Every time there's some sort of a what about this, what about this, what about this, which is what our government is killing us on. let's just do this. Let's just do this thing and get it on the same for everybody. Let them all invest, and buyer beware. This would be, I mean, our country, you think we've got economic problems? If we don't do this, we're going to have the worst economic, we're going to watch a country that is the greatest country in the world, still, although it's now ranked 4th as the best place to do business. You're going to see this greatest country in the world fall and dwindle down, and we'll end up being, in effect, we'll have the same slavery as Russia's had for 75 years. So now is the time. It is a great opportunity. We can, and on the other hand, if this crowdfunding thing happens, we will boom like nothing you've ever imagined. All of the creativity, all throughout the country and throughout the world will come here, and it will be the beacon. And I've created a university, Draper University, to hope to be that beacon for people all over the world to come and start their business and then get crowdfunded. And so let's hope that that whole thing happens. So thank you all for your patience.